Hold on, y'all. We're going for a ride. We're not in Galveston anymore. It's easy to forget how connected to the world we are through our harbor and robust railroad network. I am in Denver, Colorado, the mile-high city, Queen City of the Plains, 5,280 feet above sea level and over 1,000 miles away from Galveston Island. But why am I here? Let's explore the role that Galveston played in America's expansion westward in the late 19th century. Welcome to Galveston Unscripted. Thank you to our video sponsor, The Daily News, Texas' oldest newspaper, bringing you the news since 1842. Support your local newspaper, The Daily News. Denver, like Galveston, is strategically located among its geographic surroundings, with millions of acres of farmland to the east and the precious metal-rich Rocky Mountains to the west. The small city of Denver was founded in 1858, becoming a hub of commerce right outside of the Rocky Mountains. Before states like Colorado, Kansas, and Utah were established, the entire western half of America was divided into territories. To the objection of the indigenous peoples in this area, Colorado was established as a territory in 1861. Early settlers in Colorado had it pretty rough. The climate is dry and arid, making it difficult to farm. But many men were drawn to the Rockies because of the mining in the area. When gold was struck, it brought thousands of people into Colorado. Founders of this city envisioned Denver becoming a railroad hub, expanding along the entire western portion of the United States. That would make Denver the regional hub of commerce where all trade in the area must flow. The people of Denver and Colorado had a make-it-work mentality, the entrepreneurial spirit. A huge problem that Denver and Western territories had is that they were nowhere near a major deepwater port, making it difficult to get goods and supplies in these territories. But luckily for Colorado and the other Western territories, a little project in Galveston, Texas was expanding and deepening and widening the ship channel, making Galveston, Texas the closest deepwater port to Denver, Colorado. In the late 19th century, Colorado and Texas visionaries embarked on an ambitious economic endeavor that would forever transform the landscapes of Galveston and Denver, Colorado. The forward-thinking businessmen envisioned Denver as the central hub of the transcontinental railroad system, connecting the Pacific Northwest to the Gulf of Mexico. And at the heart of this vision was the Port of Galveston, a critical component in facilitating global trade and realizing the economic aspirations of both Colorado and Texas. But there were two problems both cities needed to overcome: an efficient and robust railroad network that would connect both economic hubs, and major investment in deepening and widening Galveston's harbor, so the largest deep draft vessels could call the Port of Galveston and service the import and export needs of the American West. When Denver was founded in 1858, they had a few problems. They didn't have a railroad network extending into Denver or Colorado. And through the 1860s, due to the Civil War, it was pretty tough to get the federal government to invest in infrastructure into Colorado and other Western territories. The Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869 and just barely missed passing through Denver. Denver was close enough to the Transcontinental Railroad that passed through Cheyenne, Wyoming to connect a spur into the main line. The closest deepwater port to Denver, Colorado today is Houston, Texas. But prior to 1914 and the completion of the Houston Ship Channel, Galveston was the closest deepwater port to Denver, Colorado. A man named John Evans, disappointed and undaunted that the Transcontinental Railroad connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans was not laid directly through Denver, but Cheyenne, Wyoming, 100 miles north, organized the Denver and New Orleans Railway Company, determined to connect Colorado to the Gulf of Mexico. Galveston would have been the first choice over New Orleans, but Galveston had a major problem. The water in the port and at the entrance to the ship channel was simply not deep enough, with some of the deepest water only about 14.5 feet. Through the 1870s, heavy investment through Texas and the American West in railroads connected Denver, Colorado to Galveston, Texas, building a robust network connecting the major cities, territories, and states in the American West to the Gulf of Mexico by way of the Port of Galveston. A railroad network that could connect you to the Gulf of Mexico was extremely important, as it reduced as much as 600 miles of a railroad journey from the American East Coast, and about 350 miles from the Port of New Orleans. And usually the more miles that your cargo has to travel aboard a train, the more expensive it'll be, making it economically viable to ship directly to the port of Galveston, only 1,000 miles away from Denver, instead of 1,600 miles to the East Coast or 1,300 miles to New Orleans. Throughout the 1880s, thousands of miles of railroad track was laid throughout the state of Texas. Dozens of railroad companies were founded. Many failed, were bought out, and combined with much larger companies, creating a web of connections into New Mexico, Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, every one of them at the disposal of the cargo passing through the port of Galveston. Now I am in beautiful Golden, Colorado, near the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. You may think that Golden, Colorado and Galveston have nothing in common, but it really comes down to economics. Right outside of the Colorado Railroad Museum is a still functioning railroad junction, performing the same purpose it did back in the late 1800s. Mining in the Rocky Mountains spurred the boom of railroad construction in Colorado from 1870 to 1900, which made mining in the mountains more economical. With a railroad network through the West and Texas all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, made exporting that material to other countries more cost-effective and more feasible. By 1884, the effort to deepen the port of Galveston had overridden the state boundaries and become a national problem. Despite being strategically located, the harbor's depth limitations hindered seagoing vessels, and the competition amongst various Texas ports added to the complexity. Galveston found itself in a rivalry with ports like Aransas Pass and Sabine Pass, each vying for federal aid to improve their harbors. Economic interests within Texas played a crucial role in the decision-making process, as the chosen port would shape the destiny of the entire region. Colorado and Texas leaders passionately advocated for Galveston to receive the federal funding, and fortunately for Galveston, investment from city leaders themselves 15 years prior paid off. In 1875, the city began building a jetty system at the entrance to the ship channel, proving to the state and federal government that Galveston was ready to become the major deepwater port of Texas and the American West. Go check out the Galveston Unscripted video on the Galveston jetty system. Railroad investors, city leaders, and governors of Midwestern and Western states had petitioned the federal government to allow Galveston to receive federal aid for deepening and widening the ship channel, which would benefit the entire western portion of the country with direct railroad access to the port of Galveston. Of course, you had ports on the west coast, but you would have to traverse the Rocky Mountains to get to the west coast, which was not easy. Not to mention, shipping trade to and from America on the Pacific coast was pretty difficult. The journey from Europe to the Pacific coast was extremely long, until the Panama Canal was dug, developed, and completed in 1914. And by 1890, after over 20 years of planning, Deepwater was within Galveston's reach. Galveston and the western portion of the United States finally received exactly what it needed: $6.2 million to deepen and widen the ship channel. Galveston finally became the deepwater port of Denver, Colorado, and most major cities in the American West. I'm sitting in traffic, but I don't want anyone in Denver to ever complain about traffic until they've driven in Houston. The connection by railroad network from Galveston to Denver helped both cities' economies boom. Now in Denver, once you could place your orders for goods and supplies directly to Europe and receive those goods quicker and cheaper, you could begin to fill your warehouses with fine European goods and sell it for much cheaper than your competitor. And the business owners in Denver figured this out really quickly. They began to fill their warehouses with goods from the four corners of the world, and they were able to ship it directly through Galveston and on a train on the 1,000-mile journey right into Colorado. Golden, Denver, and Galveston are hubs, connective tissue to the economy and the world outside of the city itself. It's funny, it's actually colder today in Galveston than it was when I filmed in Denver. Another interesting connection that Galveston has to Denver is one of its historical neighborhoods, Denver Court and the Denver Resurvey. In 1890, a group of investors from Colorado, specifically Denver, formed the Galveston Land and Improvement Company and purchased 660 acres between Broadway and the Gulf of Mexico, between 45th and 57th Street, and platted the area with residential city blocks, encompassing the southwestern third of the original 1838 city layout. This work became known as the Denver Resurvey and comprises the current neighborhoods of Denver Court and Fort Crockett. The Rocky Mountain hub of commerce, Denver, Colorado, and Galveston, Texas, the Wall Street of the Southwest. The story of Galveston's port is not just a tale of overcoming geographical challenges, but a testament to the power of visionary thinking and collaboration. The connection between Galveston's harbor and the Rocky Mountains not only unlocked prosperity for Galveston and Colorado, but also served as a cornerstone in shaping the economic landscape of the western United States. Today, as we witness the fruits of this historic collaboration, we can appreciate the foresight that laid the foundation for a thriving regional and global trade network. It's easy to see how in the late 1800s, Galveston was such a prosperous port, helping to build cities like Denver and other cities in the American West and Midwest. But as we hear about all the time in Galveston, the 1900 storm changed everything, shifting the Texas economic hub from Galveston to Houston. The connections to all of these cities helped build Galveston to what it was in the late 1800s. And we can still see some of the remnants of its prosperity today. So the next time you're traveling to cities like Denver, Colorado, make sure to remember that Galveston helped build cities like that. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all social media. We are everywhere. And if you haven't yet, go check out the podcast feed. We've got hours and hours of historical content on the Galveston Unscripted podcast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Galveston Unscripted.